The views expressed in this blog are hosted on my own website, are strictly personal, and do not reflect the views of any organization. Hello and welcome once again to Straight Bat, my weekly video blog where, as the title suggests, I comment with a straight bat. This week I want to explore a little bit more on one of my home states, Gujarat, where there's been plenty of political turbulence in the past few days. And I also want to reflect on a concept perhaps unique to Indian politics: remote control politics. That's right, a term essentially used to suggest that there is an external, all-powerful, extra-constitutional authority that is wielding absolute power over a political system. The first time I heard this term, remote control politics, was in the mid-1990s. The Shiv Sena BJP government was formed in 1995, and when we asked Bal Thackeray, the original Shiv Sena supremo, as to whether he would be chief minister, he simply laughed and said, "No, I will hold the remote control," which meant that Manohar Joshi became chief minister, but it was Mr. Thackeray who would control the chief minister. Then in the late 1990s, there was another interesting case of remote control politics. Lalu Prasad Yadav, then Bihar chief minister, gets charged in the fodder case, has to quit, and chooses to appoint his wife Rabri Devi as the chief minister. And I remember distinctly that on the first day that she became CM, I interviewed her, and it was over satellite, and I kept hearing someone's voice prompting Rabri after every answer. Turned out it was Lalu. He held the remote control while Rabri was CM. And then, of course, in the UPA years, there was the more famous instance of Sonia Gandhi as UPA chairperson, who was often accused of being the remote control of Manmohan Singh, Dr. Manmohan Singh, as Prime Minister. Interestingly, most of these accusations were made by the BJP, and ironically, today it is the same BJP leadership which in a sense is guilty of practicing remote control politics, especially when it comes to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's home state of Gujarat. And that's where Gujarat comes in. Just look at what has happened in Gujarat in the past week. A Chief Minister, Vijay Rupani, not really a powerful Chief Minister, nondescript Chief Minister, suddenly removed on a Saturday afternoon. And now we are told that Mr. Rupani did not even know that he was on his way out. He had planned a series of programs, suddenly gets a call, "You're out, Mr. Rupani," without being forewarned of his impending ouster. Then the speculation begins, kaun banega Mukhyamantri? Who will replace Mr. Rupani? The media, TV, print channels feverishly speculating that it will be a Patidar, the all-powerful caste of Gujarat, which has been the vote bank of the BJP. But among Patidar leaders, various names are thrown up of powerful leaders. Next day, Sunday afternoon, there's a BJP legislature party meeting. 2 election observers, union ministers fly into Gandhinagar, and all eyes are again on that question, kaun banega Mukhyamantri? The MLAs are gathered there. They are clueless. No one has consulted them. Meeting has suddenly been called. And then lo and behold, we are told that the chief minister will be a certain Bhupendra Patel. And people start asking, "Ye Bhupendra bhai hai kaun? Who is he?" It turns out that Bhupendra Patel is a first-time MLA who took the constituency of the former Chief Minister Anandiben Patel when she was moved out as governor. He was, according to all BJP sources I have spoken to in Gujarat, an errand boy for Anandiben Patel. Chai Lao would do all her work for her. He was sitting in the last row, my friends, during the BJP legislature meeting quietly. No one even saw him, he was not in the front row by any means. By the end of the meeting, he was in the front row because he was chief minister. The MLAs were stunned. We in the media, of course, were naturally caught by surprise. And truth be told, I am told even Bhupendra Bhai was surprised. He had no clue that he was going to be made the chief minister of Gujarat, a first-time MLA. And in a sense, what has happened in Gujarat is a classic example again of remote control politics, because having a first-time nondescript MLA perfectly suits the Narendra Modi style of functioning. Mr. Patel is a partidar, but not a dominant partidar. And in making a Bhupendra Bhai the Chief Minister, the fact is the remote control will lie with the Prime Minister's office and the Prime Minister's men in Delhi. That's what's happened in Gujarat. Now, what's really happened therefore is that the real power once again vests in a ubiquitous BJP high command. That's what's happened. High command is another word, interestingly, that came up in the Congress era, the Indira Gandhi era to be more specific. Mrs. Gandhi was seen to be the high command of the Congress in the 70s and 80s, and she had the power to remove and appoint chief ministers, especially in that period of the 1980s. Without consulting anyone within the Congress party, Delhi would decide kaun banega Mukhyamantri. Good example is in another of my home states, Maharashtra. Babasaheb Bhosle is appointed as Chief Minister of Maharashtra in January 1982. Again, very few people outside Maharashtra had heard of Babasaheb. He was not a frontline leader of the Congress in Maharashtra. He was a first-time MLA from Mumbai and was better known in legal circles as a lawyer than in political circles. But Mrs. Gandhi wanted someone who would be completely dependent on the high command, who would not be a high-profile leader. And by making him chief minister, she sent out a message to all the powerful chieftains of the Congress in Maharashtra that I decide who becomes chief minister, you will work at my bidding. So all the Maratha strongmen were sidelined in a way of Western Maharashtra by making Babasaheb Bhosle. He lasted all of 377 days, but it suited Mrs. Gandhi perfectly to have a low-profile chief minister. Ditto, my friends, Narendra Modi. Narendra Bhai has borrowed from the political playbook of Indira Gandhi in the manner in which now this government appoints chief ministers or removes chief ministers. The fact is that by appointing Bhupendra Patel, Mr. Modi has sidelined an entire generation of BJP leaders in the state. In fact, he has gone a step further, because he has put out a no repeat formula, which means what? That no minister is to be repeated. So the new government has new ministers, a new chief minister, and the entire old guard is sidelined. Now I know there will be those who will say master stroke. Elections are 15 months away. We have a complete image makeover in Gujarat. Anti-incumbency is over. It's also true that Mr. Modi perhaps can get away by saying off with their heads in a manner that Indira Gandhi could, because he is the supreme leader. He is the high command. There are murmurs of dissent. Many people are angry. The swearing in of the ministers had to be postponed by a day, but they can't do too much because they know they cannot cross the prime minister when it comes to a state like Gujarat. It's a high-risk gamble that the BJP has taken 1 year before the elections, and whether they win or not, we'll wait and see till 2022. But the truth, my friends, is that this so-called master stroke has also exposed the reality of the much talked about Gujarat model. What am I trying to say here? The fact is that for years we thought that, Gujarat is this land of milk and honey which is strongly governed. The reality is that Gujarat is increasingly run by bureaucrats who are beholden to the Prime Minister, not by a strong Chief Minister's office. Carefully chosen bureaucrats are running the show in Gujarat. In fact, I asked someone last week, who's running Gujarat? Who are the powerful people? I was given two names. One is a bureaucrat, Kailash Nathan. Mr. Kailash Nathan, IAS officer, 1979 batch, very close to the Prime Minister. He retired in 2013. At that time, a special post was created as Chief Principal Secretary to the Chief Minister. Mr. Modi then was Chief Minister. Mr. Modi moves to Delhi. Kailash Nathan is in Gandhinagar to be the Prime Minister's eyes and ears there. The second person who's become very powerful, I was told, is C.R. Patil. Who is he? He's the state BJP president, MP from Navsari, was also handling the Prime Minister's Varanasi constituency. and he too is the Prime Minister's man in Gujarat. Now, he's someone who was once arrested in a case involving a default of a prominent cooperative bank in 2002. He was interestingly a police constable when he started off his life in Surat, and there again he was suspended because he ran foul of prohibition laws. There was a raid on a bootlegger and there was a CR Patil link and he was suspended. Well, either way, he is now the state BJP president and Mr. Modi's man in Gujarat. So the buzz in Gandhinagar is that while Bhupendra Patel is the chief minister, the real power will vest with CR Patil and to some extent Mr. Kailash Nathan. Not to forget, of course, Mr. Amit Shah, the home minister, who hasn't been as actively involved, leading to some speculation that has he lost some of his power over his home state. Forget the speculation. Net, the fact is now stark and clear that the Gujarat model is not about strong institutions. It is about individuals. The Chief Minister's office matters much less than the power wielded by those who remote control it outside the CMO, where an element of cronyism now prevails, where MLAs are increasingly rubber stamps and bureaucrats or the chosen bureaucrats run the show. This is the nature of the functioning of the Gujarat model. The best response I got from BJP leaders when I put this before them, they said, "Arey, ye to Congress bhi karta tha." Yes, Congress bhi karta tha, but I thought that the BJP was supposed to be a party with a difference. In an Advani-Vajpayee era, you actually saw the emergence of strong chief ministers, including Mr. Modi himself, the likes of Kalyan Singh, of Shivraj Singh Chauhan and others. There was a genuine attempt made by the BJP to actually empower their chief ministers. Now we are seeing the disempowering of chief ministers in the new Modi model, if you want to call it that. And yes, there's one more question. When you remove all your ministers and the chief minister 15 months before the election, what's the message you're sending? Is it that for all this propaganda blitz about Gujarat and these shining billboards, there is anti-incumbency, i.e. anger against your ministers and your government's functioning? And therefore, is the mask slowly being peeled off? Is the reality, as we saw in COVID times, like in many other states, that Gujarat's governance model leaves a lot to be desired? The fact is also that as of now in the BJP, one person is permanent. All the others, it would seem, are dispensable. Think about it. That was the Straight Bat. And remember, you can log on to my YouTube channel and subscribe to it for many more such videos. For now, stay well, stay safe. Namaskar. Jai Hind.